Welcome to the Destination Gettysburg podcast.
Hi, good to be here with you, and thank you for joining me. I'm Rick Kennis, and today is this is our first episode, our first official episode of the Destination Gettysburg podcast. And as mentioned before, and it's no secret, you can see right in the title of the episode that it is all about a brand new museum coming to Gettysburg. Well, by the time you listen to this, it might already be open. On April 15th, 2023, Beyond the Battle Museum will open up to the public, okay? And that is going to be telling the remarkable story of ordinary eyewitnesses, their extraordinary experiences before, during, and after the Civil War. It's quite an amazing project that the Adams County Historical Society has undergone in preparing for this historic time. They'll have, let me check here, 12 interactive exhibit galleries that will be packed with rare artifacts exploring the story of Gettysburg like you've never seen it or even heard it before. Because now a big part of this museum is caught in the crossfire. It's a completely immersive experience, and we'll show you a couple of clips about that towards the end of today's episode. But it is no doubt the museum's premier exhibit. It's an immersive experience. It uses cutting-edge technology to place visitors inside a reconstructed farmhouse during the Battle of Gettysburg. So when you go in, you'll be able to see, hear, and feel what it was like just for one Gettysburg family to be overrun by invading forces and trapped behind enemy lines. I can't even put it into words what the experience is like. Of course, that's the big tease of the show. But there's also some other great things that will be talked about as we join Tim Smith, who is the Director of Education at the Adams County Historical Society. He'll be showing us around, looking at different artifacts and so forth, but we'll be talking about dinosaur footprints, meteorites, Native Americans, natural history. We'll also get into the Mason-Dixon line. But yeah, this is just touching on some of the things that you can experience for yourself at Beyond the Battle from the Adams County Historical Society. So let's get right into it. We started our visit, if you will, at the Devil's Den display.
Besides just writing panels for the museum and coming up with ideas for the graphics and stuff like that, we have little things that we've added. Like we had to put a snake. Did you notice the snake?
I did.
And
that's I guess if I've heard many stories, but is it basically because it was Devil's Den because the snakes were named Devil? Or?
Well, I put it on the wall.
Oh, there we go.
See? As a child, I've heard talk of the snakes which infested the country and had their den among those huge rocks. Parties of men were organized to rid the neighborhood of these dangerous reptiles. One big snake persistently eluded them. They could never kill or capture him, and they called him the Devil. So to Gettysburgers, that has always been the Devil's Den.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so that's a quote by Sally Myers, who was a local citizen who was a nurse after the battle, and she was being interviewed at the 50th anniversary, and she decided to tell the story of Devil's Den. Of course, you probably know. And what's interesting is we do not have an account predating the battle that makes mention of the place name, but we have lots of accounts right after the battle that say, oh, it was called that even before the battle by locals. So it appears, that it does get its name early on. It's just not as well known until the battle occurs, and then people are using that as a descriptive name for it. We also, of course, one of our highlights in our museum for kids is going to be our dinosaur footprints. And basically the story is in near York Springs at a place called Trossel's Quarry, which is in Latimer Township along Bermudian Creek. Some workmen were, in 1937, were quarrying stone for a bridge on the Gettysburg battlefield. And they were doing some, construction on various roads. But while they were working, one of the one of the quarriers mentioned to the man in charge that, hey, there's some interesting looking markings in these stones. And he actually stopped work. They called in a specialist. He examined the stones. They realized they were dinosaur footprints. They called in people from the state, and you can see they cut slabs out and saved them. Now, there are a bunch of slabs. We have 2, and you can see in these 2 slabs there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different footprints that you can see parts of. But their footprints were sent to the Smithsonian, in New York, the American Museum of Natural History, the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. If you go to the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh, they actually have one of our slabs on display with a footprint with the same kind of, not as elaborate as our display. And they also, at the State Museum in Harrisburg, they have a slab on display in their museum. So now, currently, the one in the Smithsonian is not on display, or in New York, I don't think it's on display, but on display, there are 3 different museums that have these footprints. And they're from dinosaur. We're not exactly sure what dinosaur made the footprint, because no dinosaur bones have ever been discovered in this area to associate with the footprint. But because we have other footprints in other places, we can kind of guess that it's a small dinosaur. And the dating of the stone is from the Triassic period. So it's it's one of the earliest types of small dinosaurs.
My 3-year-old son could tell me more about this than I would ever know.
Excellent.
He's one of the biggest dinosaur fans in the world.
Well, the kids love it.
Right.
So the group of dinosaurs that ours would come from is known as a sauropodomorph.
Okay.
An early version of the dinosaurs that grew into the large behemoths that you see that most kids really like. So it's an early, smaller version of that, and it was very similar to like a Plateosaurus.
Right.
So, and if he listens to this, then he'll enjoy that. So,
yeah, he's going to be very excited about touching those footprints one day.
And they're just, we've had them ever since they were donated to us by a guy, Frederick Tilburg, who worked at the Gettysburg National Military Park and was also an early member of the Historical Society. But they were on display in our old museum, and now they're really featured. Oh, one last thing I should mention: when you come here, you'll see there's a mural of a dinosaur, the type of dinosaur that would have made this footprint, and we actually had this commissioned by a special artist who's a naturalist, and much of her work is all over the place in museums. She just did some stuff for a museum in Texas, and also her work is at the Smithsonian. So I think it's really good to put a identity or put a visual, give some idea, some perspective of what could have made the dinosaur footprint. Now we could go around and tell you a story about everything in the museum, but it would probably get long and tedious. But one of
be here all day.
Yeah, one of our favorite things is the piece of the Mountjoy meteorite. So just to make the story simple, in 1887, a guy named Jacob Snyder was digging a hole on his farm near 2 taverns, and he was trying to plant an apple tree, and he hit something, and it was unusual looking. He dug it up. At first, he thought it was some kind of pure iron, and that maybe he hit a mine shaft, and he was going to make a lot of money selling this iron out of his yard. And he dug lots of holes and didn't find anything else. Immediately, his wife was like, "I think that's a meteorite." And eventually, a local school teacher came and looked at it and said, "Yeah, I think that's a meteorite." And so he contacted a mineralogist from Washington, D.C. The Smithsonian came up. They wanted to buy it. The stone was about 800 pounds originally. He wanted to sell it. The Smithsonian wouldn't give him the amount of money he wanted from it. He sold it to a collector. They broke pieces off of it and sold it. The largest piece, weighing about 500 pounds, was eventually purchased by the Natural History Museum in Vienna, Austria, where today the Mount Joy meteorite is displayed. We, in our collection here, have on loan a small piece of the meteorite loaned to us by the Natural History Museum in Vienna, Austria. One of our members went there and asked if they would give us this loan a number of years ago.
It's like, come on, just give us a little piece.
Yeah, sure. Literally, a little piece.
It's a good size of the palm of my hand, maybe.
So it's hard to imagine that something that came from space and, hit a farm in Mountjoy Township is now on display in Vienna, Austria.
So in the span of just doing a little 360 turn here, I can go from a dinosaur footprint to an actual item from outer space.
Yeah, and of course, this would be older.
3 to 5 billion years old. Oh my.
Now, we do have lots and lots and lots of artifacts dealing with the Native Americans in our area. So we have, arrowheads and banner stones and projectile points and stone axes and drills and grinding stones. And so we wanted to put them on display somehow. We also wanted to show how many of these items we have and put a lot of items in a display case. But we also wanted to make it educational, so we divide them up by type of artifact, and we have a little explanation of what that type of artifact might have been used for. And also we have we have a little general description of what life was like at that time. So the fields along the creek systems still to this day yield Indian artifacts. This is early settlers or life on the frontier. In each gallery of our museum, there are different themes that we could talk about or touch on. And in this particular gallery, we wanted to talk about what it was like when the areas first settled, who were the early settlers, and some of the problems with early settlement. So we have stuff about things about land ownership. When the people came in here, how do you actually gain possession of land?
Like, who does it belong to begin with?
And then the religious beliefs of the early settlers. We have Scotch-Irish Presbyterians, Germans, Catholics, and Lutherans. And, we have displays on some of the early churches. And then, of course, are we part of Maryland? Are we part of Pennsylvania? The whole debate over where the Mason-Dixon line should be. And so we put the story of the Mason-Dixon line. And in this particular gallery, again, one thing, unfortunately, since I'm doing the talking, you get different stories about me and what I liked. But I wanted a Mason-Dixon marker. I saw that there's places along the Mason-Dixon line, the line surveyed between Maryland and Pennsylvania in the 1760s, where the Mason-Dixon markers are missing, and they've replaced them over the years. Okay. And I saw articles about this, so I knew that people had molds of original Mason-Dixon markers, and we could probably get one. So we had a Mason-Dixon marker made. Now you might know that there's a marker every mile along the Mason-Dixon line, the line between Maryland and Pennsylvania. And every 5 miles, there's a crown stone. And that's with the seal of the Penn family and the seal of the Calvert family on the Pennsylvania and Maryland side. So this is a replica of a crown stone. And that side is the Penn, William Penn, and this side is the shield of the Calverts. And our border along the southern border of Adams County is about 25 miles. So I think we have 25 stones along our county. I could be 24, I don't remember, but it's about 25 miles along the southern border of the county. And it's well worth it if you haven't been to one to find the one nearest you and visit it. But some of them are on private property. One you can get to easy is they call it the Mary Penn Bed and Breakfast, because the Mary Penn Bed and Breakfast, on their property there are 2 Mason-Dixon markers. And on the Waybright's property, the farm they have there, the milk farm, Mason-Dixon Dairies, I think it's called, right? They have one on their property. So you could contact somebody and go to visit one. On this particular display, we have a survey of the Baltimore-Shippensburg Road as it passes from the Pennsylvania line through Littlestown and through Gettysburg and out and up through Mummersburg. And here you can actually see Samuel Geddes' Tavern. So this road was laid out in 1769, and it shows the early settlers. Like at that time, prior to the Dobbin House being built, John Carson owned a log house where the Dobbin House, is now located. And you can see the crossroads, between the Baltimore-Shippensburg Road and New York, Nichols Camp Road. Now, before you enter our attraction caught in Crossfire, we have some display cases dealing with civilians in the American Civil War. So, obviously our bread and butter here at the Adams County Historical Society is the civilian experience, because we have a large collection of civilian accounts. And I think when we started the museum, I had way too many civilian accounts and quotes on the wall and things I wanted to put in about the civilians. And so we just have some cases that highlight some of the different things in our collection that are really interesting. We have in our collection the original letter written by John Rupp on July 19th, 1863, written to his sister-in-law in Baltimore about the situation during the battle and how he was trapped in his basement on Baltimore Street, and the Southern Army captured the town, and they were firing bullets up the street, and Union soldiers were firing back, and he was in his basement, and he was scared to death and didn't know what to do. And it's a lengthy letter, and it's one of the best early accounts of the fighting in the streets of the town during the battle. And so we have the original letter on display. Of course, most people will know that Jenny Wade was the only civilian to be killed during the actual fighting. And Jenny died in a house on Baltimore Street, not far from John Rupp, when a bullet went through the side door of the house. And he actually mentions in the letter that she was killed while she was making bread for the soldiers, which is a real good early source for that. But Jenny, we have an artifact that's really interesting, was given to us by a local family, and they maintain that it's a candlestick that was used to hold a candle after the battle when the carpenter was making a coffin for Jenny Wade's body. So we have the candlestick on display. We have a sword. I should say we have a revolver and a sword that was given to us by the Myers family on High Street. And the story is that Peter Myers saw a horse outside, and a Confederate got off of it and ran down the street, and he ran out and stole the guy's pistol off of his saddle, and he kept the pistol. And after the battle, they found the sword in the well of the house, behind the house. And So we have a cartridge box found by a girl on Chambersburg Street. We have a table from Lydia Leicester's house. We have a rolling pin that was used by a local family to make bread for the wounded soldiers. We have a book that was owned by William Bliss. Of course, on the third day of the battle, the Bliss farm was burned to the ground by Union soldiers because Southerners were using it as a sharpshooter's nest. And of course, this book, survived the fire and was given to us as a donation. We have a couple really interesting things. We have a mirror with a hole in it from a bullet that was owned by a family on Carlisle Street. We have a scarf that was given to a local girl by a Union soldier the night before the battle. And we have a musket, a flintlock musket, and a cane that were owned by John Burns, the civilian who fought in the first day's battle and was wounded in the fighting. And although that was not the one he used in the battle, it was a flintlock musket that was owned by him. Oh, and we have a really interesting piece. We have this flag that was made by a local family. It's a handmade flag to look like a Southern flag, and the family flew this outside their house to show the Southerners who were passing by that they sympathized with their cause, and that then maybe the Southerners would not ransack or damage their property like they were to other people around. So I think it didn't work. I think they did lose stuff during the battle. But this house was on Iron Springs Road near Fairfield. We have Confederate currency on display here that was given to a local family in exchange for a meal near Cashtown. And we have some items on display from Caledonia iron furnace that was destroyed on June 26 by the rebel forces before they marched towards Gettysburg, and owned by Thaddeus Stevens. So it's kind of interesting.
This is amazing. And one thing I'm looking at here as I look at this display next to this makeshift flag is it says early demand for Kendall Hart. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, David Kendall Hart.
Kendall Hart's reply.
So basically the story is, most people, a lot of people don't realize that the battles fought on the first 3 days of July, but the Friday prior to the battle, part of the Southern Army passed through Gettysburg on their way to York. General Juba Early entered the town, and when he entered the town, he sat near a pump near the square, and he wrote out a demand for supplies that he expected the townspeople to make.
7,000 pounds of bacon. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, 60 barrels of flour, and he wants 1,000 pounds of salt, 10 bushels of onions, 1,000 pairs of shoes, and 500 hats. Yep. So he does ask for shoes.
And he also, I think he has a note on there too that he wants 2 pounds of M&Ms in every different color.
Yeah, that's right. So, there's different versions of what he asked for, but we have the original note up there. And this note and the reply by the president of the town council, David Kendall Hart, is on loan from the Gettysburg National Military Park. It was owned by the Kendall Hart family from the time of the battle up until, I would say, 2000, maybe 2005, when the family finally sold it, and eventually it became the property of the Gettysburg National Military Park, and it's on loan here. But basically, Kendall Hart was the president of the town council, got the note from Juba Early, and then wrote a letter back and said, I'm sorry. There's no way we can fulfill all your needs. We'll open up some of the shops you can look in, but we don't have the supplies because they've been sent out of town because we knew you were coming.
Yes.
And then Kendall Hart got supposedly John Burns to deliver the note, because John Burns worked for Kendall Hart as a cobbler, and supposedly it was John Burns. And then Kendall Hart left town, snuck out of town, and didn't come back for a few days just in case there was any retaliation. And apparently Early got the note, like whatever, and then the next day they went about their way. But it's a neat little story.
The orders came at 4 o'clock for everyone to go to their cellars.
Did you hear me? For God's sake, go in the house. The rebels are in the town. Get inside. Now!
You may now enter caught in the crossfire.
The best seats are here and probably here if you guys want to fully take it in.
Floor, the families.
You'll see that the family's down below you. And basically what you're going to hear is the Union retreat through Gettysburg on the first day of the battle and the chaos of the Confederates capturing the town. It's about as bad as it could have gotten for the civilians.
It's awful. There are wounded men in the street. One man on a horse told me to keep inside, all of us. The rebels are coming.
Mama, I'm scared.
Get quiet, boy.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores the valley of the shadow of death.
Open up! They're right on top of us! Help!
Protect us.
Wow. I have no words. I was here a little while ago, and it was when the floorboards weren't even in, and I didn't see the holes coming through the walls as the shots were being fired and the windows breaking, and it was still so much to take in. And then that part where the girl is screaming for her dolly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how anybody can walk out of this without chills running down their spine.
Thank you. Yeah, that is, we wanted to really do justice to how terrifying this was. Jeff Shera wrote the script to it. He really is just a master of telling a story, and so he took different pieces of different stories that we thought would resonate, and then when you walk out, you're in the aftermath.
I think you mentioned this a while back. There will be a warning.
Yes, there's a content warning on the front. We'll also have a docent out in the front to kind of set the tone.
We all had ideas that we put towards it, though. And Indra had a lot of ideas, obviously. I guess I'm not so much into the immersive experiences. I was always into the quotes of the people. So I kind of supplied a lot of the quotes that he changed into really good narrative. But the dog is my idea. Except in my story, I think, my initial story, I think the dog dies in my story.
Oh, you're evil. Well,
we thought that would be a little too much.
you always have to put a dog in there dying somewhere, because whenever you're watching like a crime show on TV, they kill person after person, but then when they kill the dog, that's when you lose sleep.
Right. Yeah, right.
It's like, why did they have to kill the dog?
That's right. So these are actually, Tim, do you want to explain the wall here?
What we wanted to, I guess we wanted people, when they went into the house, to just think they were going to the house. When they come out, they can see that the house had been battered by the battle. And so we had, kind of bullet holes placed in the wall. And we were going to take some bullets from our collection and put them in there, but we thought they might be damaged. So these are actual bullets that I found myself. These are from my personal stock of bullets I found over the years, either eyeballing them or with my metal detector at hospital sites around the town. But so Now, people might look at it and think, oh, come on, that's a little too much. Houses weren't that badly damaged during the battle. So then across here in our aftermath case, you can see we have a photograph of the stock house on Washington Street taken in October of 1863, November 1863, and you can kind of see battle damage on the building and how bad some of these buildings were damaged. And then we have bullet holes in a bed, we have bullet holes in a sign from the street, we have wood from the battlefield that had bullets embedded in it, and we have relics and artifacts from the aftermath of the battle on display. So they can kind of visually see that we're not exaggerating too much.
Well, thank you so much. Of course, we've been here with Tim Smith, the Director of Education, and I believe that's your formal title.
Yep, and historian.
Master of everything. But thank you very much. It's
you're
been
welcome.
a pleasure. I personally, this has been something that has been very exciting to see. And when I say from the ground up, it's nothing by what you've seen. But like just in the periodic visits I've had over the past year, it's just been amazing to see and to see from just the beams at their bare core to where this is right now, where people can get this just full immersion into Adams County and beyond. It's amazing.
Thank you for listening to the Destination Gettysburg podcast. Produced and hosted by Rick Kennis, with thanks to our special guest. No part of this material may be reproduced without written permission. Get inspired for your visit to Adams County, Pennsylvania at destinationgettysburg.com.